Greetings, everyone. My name is Emily Louie, and on behalf of Campbell and Company, I would like to welcome you to Where Do We Go From Here? Moving from Crisis Mode to Proactive Planning. We want to thank all of you for joining us today and hope we can provide some relief during this difficult time. Before we begin today's presentation, I'd like to quickly go through some logistics for those of you who may be new to our webinars. First, please close any programs other than GoToWebinar that are running on your computer. Next, we recommend calling in with a telephone instead of using your computer speakers. And if you experience any visual issues, please send a chat to Campbell and Company or contact GoToWebinar at the number on your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded and will last 60 minutes. Within the next 24 hours, you'll receive an email from GoToWebinar that includes information on how to access this recording. We do welcome questions throughout the webinar, so please use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel that should be on the right side of your computer screen. We will also be holding time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. Now I'd like to turn it over to our presenters today, Executive Search Senior Counsel Marion DeBerry, Strategic Information Services Consultant Michael Furlong, Communications Senior Consultant Anna Gorin, and Vice President Sarah Wagner.
Good morning and afternoon, everyone. I'm Marion DeBerry. I'm Senior Counsel for the Executive Search Practice of Campbell and Company. I've been with Campbell and Company since 2006. I've been in executive search since 1996. That's clearly an ouch moment, given it's my third career. I look forward to talking with you. My sectors include all the factors that we cover in executive search, certainly development, but in the areas of arts and culture, independent schools, education and the environment, human services, and I always leave one out, and I wonder which one I left out this time. I will now move it over to my colleague, Mike Furlong.
Hi, I'm Mike Furlong. I've been with Campbell & Company for just about 7 years now in the Strategic Information Services Division, focusing on databases. This is my first, nonprofit-esque job. Before this, it was strictly volunteering and actually working in the banking industry for JP Morgan. Anna?
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Gorin. I'm a senior consultant on our communications team, so that means I get to work with all these lovely colleagues on, organizational case for support, annual fund messaging, campaign visions, all sorts of things in every sector. And I've been at Campbell & Company for over 5 years, and I've worked in the intersection of nonprofit and communications for over a decade, doing all kinds of things from being a freelance writer to being a research writer on several projects at the School of Social Work at McGill University, a food bank coordinator. So I'm lucky that I get to work doing this important work. And like many of you, I've been working from home for a long time, and it's great to connect with so many of you, even if virtually. So over to you, Sarah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Wagner, Vice President of the Fundraising Consulting Division, and I have been in the fundraising space now for 40 years, the last 27 of which have been at Campbell & Company. And I work with clients in many sectors, including arts and culture, human services, conservation, and education. So let's proceed with our agenda here. Today we're going to give you an overview of where we've been and what comes next during this pandemic. And the four of us will share some strategies to help you navigate the areas of fundraising, communications, analytics, and talent management. And of course, we will have time at the end for your questions. So to begin with a big picture, these are two slides that you have probably seen before, but that are worth reminding ourselves about. These are the most recent Giving USA slides. The first one, if we go back one, looks at the last 50 years of giving. And we know that during this time, total giving increased every single year with the exception of 3 years. 1987, of course, Black Monday, and the economic downturn in 08-09. But it's worth reminding ourselves that we are charitable beings inherently. And the second slide shows we know that charitable giving has a statistically significant correlation to the stock market. So we know, because it's an indicator of financial security, that in 08, 09, while some people continued to give, other people needed more time until they felt comfortable giving again. So that's what we know about giving in general. Let's take a look at the early days of the crisis. So unfortunately, there have been layoffs and some closures, but PPP has prevented layoffs for many organizations. However, we know that staffing will need to be revisited, probably in early June when PPP runs out for some folks. We've all been working with crisis communications, and we'll hear more about that later. But most of you have been sharing frequent updates with your constituents and keeping your messaging brief, clear, and calm. We're all working from home and have had to adjust to technology needs and different methods of communication, as well as work-life balance, or as one of my colleagues says, it's really just integration now. There isn't really any work-life balance. Loan applications and grants, many private and community foundations and government agencies have stepped up to help in terms of more operating support and repurposing grants in some cases that were given for more specific reasons. Many organizations have seen surging demand for services, and some have seen declining demand for services. Some are fighting for survival, such as some arts organizations, and others are seeking increased funding to keep up with demand. Food banks, shelters, and other health services and human services. And they all present issues that need to be resolved. Online programming has really stepped up. We've seen some very creative content produced in a short time frame, some original, some repurposed. And there have been an abundance of virtual events, particularly those organizations that had spring events and galas, and we'll touch more on this shortly. And of course, everyone is familiar with the COVID-19 Relief Fund for their organizations, which came online as organizations began to really clarify the financial impact of COVID-19 on their bottom line. So what comes next? Planning is what we're here to talk to you about today, how to plan amid uncertain circumstances. We don't know how long the effects of COVID-19 will last, but we do know that it will end, and we need to be ready for several possible scenarios. Organizations are reconsidering their business models. These don't always have to do with fundraising, but of course they do in the end when it gets to the bottom line. Performing arts organizations and theaters are looking at how to social distance. Online learning for educational institutions are looking at how that impacts tuition, fewer elective surgeries for hospitals, etc. The pipeline, assessing your major gift pipeline. This is a really important time to take stock of your major gift pipeline for your annual fund as well as for your campaign if you are in campaign mode. And of course, building stronger donor relationships. It's one of our most critical tasks is to stay in regular touch with our major donors and to build strong personal relationships. Board members have been stepping up and can be deployed in new ways. We need to keep them informed so they can help manage from crisis to long-term stability and so that they can be ambassadors with our donors. Events, it's a key contributed revenue stream. How will we reimagine events, specifically in the fall? That's what many people have their eye on right now. Digital communications, people have really raised the bar here, and expectations are higher now. We see new work and premieres, for instance, from arts organizations, and all sorts of ways, creative ways to engage constituents. updating your case for support, and recentering on your vision. It's important to double down on your organization's vision and impact with an update for COVID-19, and in that order. Anna will talk more about that. And of course, talent acquisition, planning talent acquisition for the next 24 months. Marion will share some ideas for that. So in terms of fundraising and fundraising planning, the question is how to create a fundraising plan for the coming months and year amidst uncertainty. Now is the time to move from reactive to proactive planning. Whether you are a small or a large organization, now's the time to create scenarios to carry you through the summer, through calendar year end, and beyond to the end of your fiscal year if you're not on a calendar fiscal. So we're looking at a 3-month plan, a 6-month plan, and a 12-month plan, and adjusting as we go. It's important to look at each area of fundraising activities: major gifts from individuals, institutional giving, events, direct mail, e-philanthropy, social media, planned giving, a campaign if you're in one, and ask yourself and your team what will still work from the plan that you previously had in place and what needs to be adjusted, line item by line item. In terms of your major gift pipeline, analytics can be incredibly important here, and Mike will elaborate on this a little later. But take this time to quantify all of your major donors. Your annual donors at 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever level you consider a major gift for your organization. And if you're in a campaign, your 100,000 plus campaign donors. So analytics will give you new information in addition to those you have already identified. The next step is to then qualify those prospects through personal major gift officer methodologies, whether that's a call at this point or research. And then to rebalance the portfolios of your major gift officers, putting in those new top prospects and moving some of the others out. And you might also consider building an exploded gift table to help you reach your goals. So instead of a regular gift table where you've got 5 gifts at $10,000 and 15 prospects in a 3-to-1 ratio, you will take it a step further. And for those 15 prospects, you will assign a name to each one of those 15 possibilities so that you really have who are the people that you are going to be in touch with to help you reach your fundraising goals. Relationships are, as always, key. We know from experience during the last recession that donors continued to give, and many of them gave at the same level. However, most of them focused their giving on organizations that they cared most about and organizations that cared most about them. Donors want to know how your organization is faring. Most of them have time to talk, and they are actually answering their phones. They will remember which organizations took the time to connect with them and which organizations went silent. So conduct frequent care calls to your donors. Check in with them, find out how they're doing personally, and then they will want to know how your organization is doing. Some may want to give now, some may just want to stay informed, and that's a case-by-case, one-on-one situation. Likewise, focus on engaging your board. Make one-on-one calls to them and check in and see how they are doing, you or your executive director or CEO. Those can be divided up. But if they're amenable to helping, you know their skill sets and give them assignments, whether it be connecting with donors or financial planning or whatever their skill set is. And some have offered, and others will offer to help with additional financial contributions during this time. We have lots of examples of challenge grants and such. When it comes to fall events, there are lots of considerations here. And this is a set of questions that you can ask yourself to help determine whether or not you should do a fall event, whether you pushed your spring event to the fall, or you're considering an extra event to help make up for lost revenue, or it's your regular gala time. Ask yourself, what is the event's purpose? Is it fundraising or fundraising? Because there are different strategies that come to play depending on the purpose of the event. And it's not necessarily an or, it's often an and or. Do you need the event revenue in your current fiscal year? You don't want to miss out on those donors who only come to events, and that is the only way that they connect with your organization. And those are donors that, keep in mind here, the calendar year, not necessarily your fiscal year. So those donors that would only connect via an event in a calendar year, 1 year to the next. What's the true ROI of the event, with and without the expense of a dinner and a venue? Many organizations that held their spring galas came close to budget when they switched to virtual, because they didn't have those big expenses of dinner and venue. And many of the sponsors and table buyers agreed to convert those sponsorships and table costs to contributions. Will people want to gather in person in the fall? Even if gatherings are approved by states and health departments, will people actually go to an event? And if it's an in-person event, can you implement social distancing? How will this impact the number of tickets and tables you can sell, and thus the revenue? Can you offer a combination for those some who might want to come and some who might not, if, for instance, the numbers are limited in how many can gather? So a virtual option and in person, such as perhaps the auction is online and there's a live feed of the program, so guests can participate in some of those functions remotely. If you've decided that you want to go with a virtual event, will it be virtual live or on demand? And that depends on how much time you have to plan. Virtual requires more preparation, and on demand may end up being more polished. Different platforms are good for different priorities here. Does your audience have virtual event fatigue? Well, honestly, probably yes, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't still have the event. Many of us have seen that happen with direct mail. Are people tired of receiving mail? Sometimes, yes, but they continue to give, and it helps the organization meet its financial goals and fulfill its mission. But make sure your expectations are realistic, both the attendance as well as the revenue projections. Will sponsors and auction donors give over this summer period before a fall event? This is a good question. Many small businesses are hurting right now. They may not be in a position to offer auction items, or they may want the exposures. Will sponsors give as much to a virtual event? This again is a one-on-one time to contact your sponsors from last year and see how they feel to help you make that decision. And are board members prepared to share the event with their networks? Because board participation is critical, and it always has been, no matter whether the event is in person, virtual, or on demand. Your board member networks and participation in selling tickets and tables is still critical to the success of your event. I'm going to turn it over to Anna now to talk about communication.
Thanks, Sarah. I think with communications, this has just been a really tough time on a lot of communication staff, on a lot of fundraising staff who have been thrust into new kinds of communications, and to really everyone at an organization that has had to really shift the way that we communicate with donors. So I think to start, I would say this is a great time to just pause, take a breath. If you're in an organization where your communication staff have been just hustling to get out that 90-day communications plan and shift over your events to virtual and connect with donors in all new kinds of ways, maybe take a day of PTO and pause and give yourself some space to start planning in weeks and months instead of days and hours, the way that many of our clients have been. I think that we're starting to see people do that. And it's a really good time to assess the impact of the last few months on your case and your vision. And I really think, there are some questions here up on the slide to sort of help think through that. But really the big picture here is that there's no one size fits all approach to what case development is going to look like from here on out. Like Sarah mentioned, different sectors are hit differently by this crisis. And different sectors are seeing an increased urgency in different ways for their work. So a couple of questions to kind of guide this process of planning for your case and your vision. One, is our organizational or campaign vision fundamentally changed because of the pandemic? And another way of thinking of that is asking the question, do we need to make a different kind of change in the community? No doubt your work has changed in the last couple of months. At the very least, you've been working from home, right? But many people have been, like Sarah said, taking things online, responding in all new kinds of ways if you're a human services organization on the front lines or the healthcare sector. So your work has changed, but this is a time to ask, has our vision changed? Do we need to make a different change in the community? And the answer may very well be, no. The work that we have put forward and the vision we put forward is still the same vision that makes sense right now, and may in fact be the case that vision is actually more urgent than it was 3 months before. We've also seen the opposite be true. I think particularly with human services organizations that are seeing just a real spike in need, and this pandemic, has just really put a spotlight on some of these broader systemic issues that organizations address. And this might be a time to say, hey, we need to actually shift in a different direction to address those needs. And here's an opportunity to step back and think about that. Another question is, what does the community especially need in the coming years, and why are we positioned to offer it? So that's, instead of looking back and assessing, if you were starting a campaign before all of this, or if you had a new strategic plan, whatever direction you had been putting forward, maybe in that first question, but this is kind of looking to the future and taking a look around and seeing what, the people you serve and the communities you serve, what are we projecting that they are going to be dealing with months and years from now, even if and when the immediate effects of the crisis are over. And that's an opportunity to kind of reposition your case around that. And then finally, what does your response to COVID-19, what you've been doing over the last couple of months, what does it say about you as an organization? So one way to think about that is, if you're a human services organization and you're really built to help families through a crisis like this, there are all new kinds of, new families that are going through a crisis that they may not have been before. So this is an opportunity to kind of lift up that area of your work in this new context. And that's true of, arts organizations as well. Maybe you have, over the last 20 years, really inspired people to make meaning out of a challenging time. That's really, that's really resonant right now. So there are these kind of bigger, more sweeping, visionary ideas that are put in the context of this moment that give you a chance to sort of say something meaningful about your organization that was true before, but is especially true in the context of COVID-19. And then, there's a few other strategies here that, in addition to just assessing the impact on your case and figuring out how to move forward, I'd say the big caveat to all of this is that there's a lot that we just don't know, right? And I think as communicators in this world where we want to put forward a better vision for the future, we want to be able to say, this is what we're going to do and this is the impact we're going to make. But right now, I think that, donors and, all people are living in this reality where there's just a lot that we don't know. But don't let that stop you from putting that vision forward. I think people are really hungry to find a way to move forward. So many of the things that, sort of make our lives meaningful have fallen away in certain ways. And I think nonprofits play this really special role in putting forward an exciting vision for the future, some hope for the future that people are really craving right now. So a couple of strategies, within that context. One is, like I said before, definitely updating your case. This is, we can't ignore this reality. We can't pretend like this isn't happening or didn't happen. But it doesn't mean you have to go back to the drawing board, right? So actually, there was a really interesting market research study that was completed back in April, assessing the impact assessing the attitudes about philanthropy in Canada, the United States, people 35 and over. And they found that 71% of people who already donate think that nonprofits should continue to ask for their, general work, even if the cause is not directly related to COVID-19. So that kind of relates to the point I made before, making a broader value proposition for your work and putting it in the context of COVID-19. I think if you do make updates, places where we're really seeing that those updates make a lot of sense are in a change in context for your work and environment. So maybe the vision is the same, the impact is the same, but you have to, sort of be honest about the change in context for your work. It also might mean an increased need. I think that we're seeing that with a lot of organizations and sort of repositioning what the urgency is and what the needs are of people you serve. And there's really an opportunity for actually a stronger call to action there to really ask people to step up, particularly people whose lives haven't been affected as directly by this crisis. I think there's a general sort of hesitancy to ask, or there has been right now. And so, we just want to give you permission, I think, particularly for people, who have not been hit as hard by this crisis to say, if you care about our work, if you care about our mission, the need is even greater right now than it has been in the past. And then there's an opportunity to kind of look at specific programs or projects that you may have been investing in, maybe for a campaign or just for your organization more generally, and decide, do we want to shift around the way we're prioritizing these programs? And I've seen that a lot. Perhaps there was a capital project that you were working on, and maybe you'll shift that around to talk about less about the exciting Capitol building itself, and maybe it's more pertinent to talk about the work that's going to happen in that building and how that's going to be, so relevant to what's going on right now. Or it may be that some advocacy work that had been kind of a smaller project on the side is actually, really important in the context of COVID-19, and you're going to sort of lift that work up. I think this is a great time to just practically speaking, lean on some more flexible tools and materials. It's, easier on your budget to not print out a run of 5,000 glossy brochures, particularly when we don't know when we're going to be meeting face-to-face with people with a lot of regularity. And it just gives you the flexibility that we're going to need moving forward, so that you don't feel like you can't put out a case or a vision until you know every last detail, because then we won't be putting out anything at all. There are a lot of really, really flexible formats that will allow you to move forward, to have those conversations, but not commit you the way that a big printed brochure does. So a couple ways to do that, I think something as simple as just internal talking points, FAQs, cheat sheets. These are things that you can create on the fly. You can do them in Microsoft Word. They're really easy. And it really all comes back to having that essential need to know information, particularly when it's, happening in real time. You're making these COVID-19 updates, making sure everyone in your organization, especially when you're spread out and not all at the office, is all, singing from the same songbook, so to speak, that everyone kind of has their talking points. You're all on the same page, that it's in language that people can use, and you can get on a Zoom call with someone and have a conversation. I think those are really kind of sort of low risk materials that you can just put together right away. For something a little more polished, something like a PowerPoint deck is great. Those are really flexible. You have talking points that each person can update. You can add slides, you can update slides on the fly, and those are great for organizations who, are a little bit in flux in some of the details, understandably because of the situation we're in, but still really have that urgency to ask for that campaign or that annual fund or whatever it may be. And then really just moving pieces digital. We're seeing a lot of digital annual reports for organizations who, don't want to have material go out of date. And, those materials online are just easier to produce with a shorter time frame to have information be a little more in real time. So that's another tool at your disposal as well. And then finally, this last point, focus on your closest supporters while broadcasting messages about giving. Another way of thinking about that is ask for what you need from your closest people. They're the ones who want to see this work move forward no matter what. And then in your broad communications, show why philanthropy matters. I think many organizations are already good at doing that, saying the value of philanthropy, and this is an opportunity to really broadcast that. And if you haven't had a chance to really articulate the role of philanthropy at your organization, this is a great time to do that, and make sure that everyone who's interacting with you, visiting your website, checking out your live seal cam of the animals at your aquarium, people who are, checking out your webinars, really understand the value of philanthropy to your missions. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Mike, to talk about database and analytics.
Thanks, Anna. In my short time with you today, I'm hoping to speak a bit about database and analytics with a quick touch on survey also. I'll kick it off with my favorite, the database, since that's where I end up spending the most of my time. When thinking about your database, there are 4 areas related to data integrity that I'd like to focus on as we think about planning for the future. Most database systems today have a tool that can be run to check for duplicates. If possible, we recommend that these results be manually checked to make sure they're truly the same constituent, and we're not combining 2 John Smiths in Chicago who are actually not the same person. I'm currently working with an independent school who's working through this process right now. They were quite surprised when they ran the tool and had over 400 possible duplicates, even though they have an internal process of checking the database before entering a new constituent record. Now, if you happen to be using spreadsheets or have a system that does not have an integrated tool, feel free to send me an email. I'll send you some logic to use in Excel or Google Sheets that can do a quick comparison of names and addresses to look for duplicates for you. This is yet another reason to keep those addresses up to date. As we prepare to move forward, it'll be important that we are able to effectively communicate with our constituents, as Anna was previously addressing. Having accurate address data is helpful in many ways, saving on undelivered mail costs, having accurate data for screening, and ultimately making sure that our message is finding the right recipients. Now, hopefully this is just a reminder as you've always been tracking your actions. But this is even more crucial as gift officers have been working from home and the usual office communication has been lacking recently. And I'm not just talking about gift officers here. Anyone at your organization that is interacting with a donor or prospect should be entering those contacts into the system. Looking at the coming months, we'll want to make sure that any interactions we've had with our constituents is being tracked so we can reference it as well as report out on it. Speaking of reminders, relationship management tracking. For those of you familiar with Campbell, you know we like our relationship management. I feel it's our mantra around here. So similar to tracking our actions, relationship management tracking is something you want to be doing all the time. I did feel the need to specifically call it out here just because it is so important. Once again, looking forward, it'll be more important than ever to keep track of and in touch with your major donors. Your best donors and prospective donors should be assigned to fundraisers' portfolios with stages and proposals tracked in your database. You may need to change proposal amounts and dates as you learn more about your prospects and their particular situations, but having this data tracked in your system will help you evaluate your pipeline, which is key for projecting future revenue. Which brings me to reports. As we know, a portfolio report, hopefully one that includes a pipeline, is an important report at all times. Looking forward, it will be more important to easily track which constituents each gift officer is responsible for and how close they are to that ever-important solicitation. I was working with a university last year that was just starting to implement a version of this report. About a month ago, I followed up to see how things were going, and the DoD said that as of February, obviously before all of this happened, every single one of their gift officers had increased giving over the previous year and cited the pipeline report as a big reason. Now, I imagine my fundraising colleagues helped out there a little bit, but coming from the database guy, it's totally the pipeline report. An activity report is also key. This report is great for keeping track of all the interactions that are going on between gift officers and their prospects. It's a fairly simple report to create at a high level, and you can add complexity based on your needs. Finally, giving reports. Monthly, weekly, quarterly, whatever it might be, now more than ever, it's important to know how much money you have coming in. As you're able to compare it to the same time last year, some organizations have seen a surge in giving due to COVID-19. Is it sustainable? Can you expect giving to go back to normal levels, whether giving is currently up or down? Being able to track the money on a regular basis is important now and will continue to be important moving forward. At Campbell, we use analytics in many ways to help our clients learn about the capacity and engagement of their constituents and help drive decision-making, goals, and strategies. Right now, analytics can be a powerful tool to extend current strategies or pivot to come up with new plans. It can be relatively quick to get moving because so much of the data used in these processes come from your database. So This obviously works a little better if you're doing the things we just talked about on the database side. We do like to focus on demographics, giving patterns, attributes, actions, relationship management, and wealth ratings to inform our analyses. Wealth ratings, or capacity, can come from a variety of places, including internal research partners, peer reviews, or external screening vendors. As Sarah mentioned in the fundraising section earlier, screening can play a key role in producing the initial ratings that can be used to quantify donors. If you don't have wealth ratings, or your ratings are more than 3 years old, it can be a quick and effective process to conduct an electronic screening with a vendor partner. This estimating the capacity of your prospects gives you important insight into the type of philanthropic impact a potential donor could have on a program. Once we have an idea of capacity, we want to focus on levels of engagement for prospects. This can be done in lots of ways, depending on in-house expertise or vendor partners. But the point is that you want to gauge how close a constituent is to your organization. Knowing this gives you a good idea of who your best prospects are and how they've been plugging into the organization. Recently, with COVID-19, maybe even more important to add a third lens to this analysis, which is evaluating risk. Risk represents the urgency of reaching out to a constituent to keep them as a donor. Prospects with a high risk factor include donors whose annual gifts are decreasing in value, donors who typically give during events that have so far been canceled this year, lapsed and first-time donors who gave last year who have yet to make a gift this year, and also organizations that typically make gifts on a spring or summer cycle. Using these three factors of capacity, engagement, and risk, you can assign prospects to segments, allowing you to develop a short-term action plan for each. And last but not least, survey. Moving forward, launching a short survey to all prospective donors who are not currently under management can help you get a sense of how they're currently feeling. Now, for those donors who are under management, we'd recommend a check-in call from the relationship manager that hits on the same points of the survey. This is a great reason for a personal touch point if you're looking for one. Starting that conversation with, we're conducting a survey, but want to reach out to you personally, etc. And of course, we're recording all of these interactions in the system. Also, you shouldn't expect to hear from or connect with everyone, but people do seem to be more receptive to surveys as of late. I recently launched a survey for a healthcare organization where we saw a significant increase in response rates last month than we were seeing prior to the pandemic. The point is to gather as many responses as quickly as possible so you can get a sense of how your community is feeling. You're really looking to find out how people are feeling in general, specifically around our current COVID-19 situation. As we know, this is different from state to state, person to person. How are they feeling about your organization right now? Are you a priority? Are there more pressing issues for them right now? Will you be a priority as things start to move forward? And how they want to communicate with you. This is good to know as they may be getting a lot of communications right now and have a preference for how they'd like to receive information in the future. And ultimately, whether philanthropic giving is still on their radar right now. Depending on the donor, now may not be the right time to solicit a gift, but could be a great opportunity if you're in need of volunteers as people have some extra time on their hands. Finally, you're going to want to keep the survey open for at least 1 week to give people a chance to respond. It's also helpful to send out a reminder the day before the survey closes to catch anyone like myself who tends to put things off to the last minute. So good idea there. And with that, I will send things over to the wonderful Marion DeBerry to talk about talent management. Marion?
Thank you, Mike. And obviously, none of this is possible without people. So let's talk about this for the time that we have. And I'd like to split myself into two because I'd like to talk about it from the employer side and I'd like to talk about it from the employee side. Some things are a reminder for you in terms of how you manage your team. And if you're a good manager, you're close to them anyway. But now, more than ever, you need to be a little bit closer, more than you think that you should have been in the past because you didn't want to be intrusive. But we're all home. Call us. And those of you, by the way, who are used to working remotely, help keep teaching the rest of us how to do it. But you have to make sure that your employees are feeling like your team is always included, that they are not left out because it's just easy to do it because we can't wander off to the kitchen or the water cooler to talk to each other about this. So one of the key things I think for employers in this, once you settle yourself into, we are now in close to month 3, that you are beginning to think even now about what the future will look like. Because the reality of this is that we'll need different things in the future. We'll need different skills in the future. We need different people in the future. And even though right now some of you are in the painful position of having to let go and say goodbye to really critical people, the reality is it could be a blessing for you. And the reason that it is because your organization may need something different anyway. And this is the time to really think about it. And I put this pretty much in a 24-month horizon because I think that's the reality of it. I think Sarah said it. We know that this will end, but we don't know really when. And so we have to begin to think about the kinds of differences that we need, particularly since much of this conversation has focused around development. That's where I'll focus my comments today. But you'll need to think about what's really needed and how you will get there. And I'm still on the employer side and how you bring and make strong teams. It will look like a buyer's market because the reality is with people letting people go, it will look as if there are more people on the market, but they may not necessarily be on the market for you because that goes back to the planning because you'll need to think about what is the best set of skills that you will need. It could also be an interesting opportunity for you because you may be able to look inside in a different way than you did in the past. Often, particularly in development, we think you need a discrete set of skills. You can only find them if people have done development before. But the reality is the market already had a shortage of strong development professionals. You're going to need to look beyond that anyway. And this is an interesting time to do it. So things to just stay aware of. Expect Zoom when we talk about going back to the office and productivity. That's not going anywhere. So we also need to be, as Sarah has mentioned, be aware of what Zoom fatigue looks like, and think about what talent needs. We think it's a good time to look inside. There's someone sitting, well, they would have been sitting right down from you, but they may be near you, and it could be someone that you could exploit and develop a different set of skills. Exploit's the wrong word. Molly, may I have the next slide? Start now to plan what you need. It's not too early. We've settled into what working from home looks like. So get beyond that and begin to think about if you could envision, and we call it backward visioning, if you could envision what 2022 looked like, take the end and move to the beginning to see how you can make it happen. I think sometimes in the nonprofit space, we think about loyalty in a different way than other sectors may. Not to say that they don't, but we just think about it differently sometimes. And so because of that, when we're in the midst of letting people go, we try to replace them with the same type of person. Not necessarily. You still want to think about the needs of the organization as well as your team. Be transparent because it's painful to let someone go by Zoom. And so that will require a sensitivity that you may not have had. Some of you can already speak to that. And again, if you have some suggestions about how to do that more empathetically than we'll allude to here, we're happy to know what that is. I talk about looking for the real job. And by that, I mean, we've often seen position guides and descriptions that really talk about the responsibilities. And we all know this. You need a certain set of qualifications. You need a certain set of skills. You need to have raised this much money. You need to be able to work with this kind of team. But for now, you to distinguish yourself, look beyond that. What does the person really do day to day? And make that part of the communication that you're doing when you're looking to attract people. Similarly, for the people that you keep. What is the real job that you really want them to do? Because it's going to be different now, no matter if it was the same job. Major gift officer in the next 2 years, it doesn't mean the same as major gift officer did 2 years ago. So be aware of that and think about how you might adjust what your expectations are. Now, job seekers, it's going to be real competitive out there. You're going to have to really distinguish yourself. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be in a search if you feel that it's time for you to be in a search. That if you are, understand what the competition means and how you distinguish yourself. One of the things that we think is a reality is that people will network harder than they ever had to find out who they can find inside, how they can manipulate, how they can find a way to get in front of people. That can work for you. However, on the employer side, you can run into the danger of only hiring yourself over and over again. And you want to resist that because you may hire for the familiar, but it is sometimes the unfamiliar that gives you the right kind of attention that propels your organization forward. So that's something we think to be aware of. Expect opportunities to take longer for two reasons. One, organizations are still adjusting to what they need. And two, the competition is so much greater, the organizations have to think about a lot more possibilities and potential candidates. But also understand that you'll have to move beyond what you believe your position guide is and how you can add value. Because just as we're asking organizations to look forward, we're also asking you to look forward and see what you would look like as an employee, as a member of a team in 2 years, and how you would add value that way. And then the last one, which is always something that I beat up about, is make sure that your resume talks about what you've done rather than what you were hired as the responsibilities. Responsibilities we can find on pieces of paper, accomplishments we find in people. So I think we have enough time left for some questions, so I will stop there. Yeah.
Thanks, Marian. So we will now be taking audience questions, so please send them through the questions box and the GoToWebinar control panel. We also invite you to share your experiences and how your organization has been responding to COVID-19, so we hope you send those through as well. So our first question is, for membership organizations who may provide benefits to their donors, what are benefits looking in a COVID or post-COVID world?
So memberships, yes. Certainly there are many more online memberships, online benefits that are being put in place for organizations that have memberships. Many organizations with memberships are also extending the date of the expiration of their membership because they have missed so many months that were not available to members to use their services. It's something that is really a moving down the road. So you're going to be offering some new things, extending the membership, and getting back to some of the benefits you had before while creating some new ones for them too, particularly in the digital space and some of those, for instance, digital tours that art museums have been offering.
To add on to that real quick, Sarah brought up a good point of extending that membership. I just want to let everyone know that I've been alerted from a couple different systems that organizations have been working in that they've added this capability to the systems in order to push that membership out a fixed amount of time for everyone instead of going into each constituent individually. So that's not something you're familiar with. It is worth reaching out to your system owner to see if there's help there.
Thanks. Our next question is, regarding campaigns, are you seeing a shift in pledge commitments and timelines for actual cash to come in the door versus prior to COVID-19?
In some cases, yes, and in some cases, no. It's a little bit early right now to have a full view of that, but we do know from the economic downturn in 08-09 that actually 95% of the campaigns that we were working on met or exceeded their goals, but they took longer. They had to extend that timeline, which by inference means extending pledge payments schedules in some cases, and in some cases waiting until, as I said earlier, donors felt comfortable with their personal financial situation to be able to give. So the answer is yes, probably that will happen again in this situation.
Great. Our next question is for you, Mike. Could you please share some thoughts on the benefits of doing an email survey versus mailed survey because of the diverse donor contact information available?
Yes, definitely. Email surveys are more affordable if you have that information. It's easier to run analysis on the back end. Again, using SurveyMonkey or other survey tools, you're able to download that information and distill it easier than, again, if you're mailing it out, there's a cost associated with those mailings, return cost to get it back. There's more time involved with mailing surveys also. It's just not as immediate. And then once you get that information back, you need to have someone that's going to go through each paper survey to tally those responses, as well as, read through the text-based responses, where there is software now that can do word clouds and other things to pull in that information to get something more immediate, as opposed to having to wait and read through however many responses you might be getting back.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, how frequently do we contact donors?
This is a very good question, because a lot of organizations have been reaching out for additional gifts for their COVID-19 relief funds, and donors have been stepping up to the plate and have been very generous in many cases. And yet we still want to make sure that they're amenable to a year-end request, a calendar year-end request, and beyond, if you've got another June 30 or a different fiscal year end. So you really need to think about it differently for your major gift donors and your annual fund donors. And for your major gift donors, at some point here, before you ask for another gift, if they've already given one, and before year end, we need to set the expectations for them that, of course, we are still hoping that you will give your annual fund gift to us at year end, as you have traditionally done. We're hoping you could see your way to do that. If you're asking for another gift, at this point, many organizations are, if the major gift donor has already given a second gift, they're holding off for a year-end gift. And then take a look for your annual fund donors at how often they have been solicited by you, what your regular pattern is, and make a judgment call as to how many more above that, assuming you've already done some additional for COVID-19, will be productive.
Great.
And I would say too, just
to
add quickly, Emily, I think all of what Sarah shared is really on point. And then just, sort of interspersing those asks with just continued engagement opportunities. I think we've seen a lot of really great creative ways to continue to engage with donors, both annual fund donors and major donors, around the COVID context. And I think as we look forward, I think we can keep those engagement strategies. I think there's so much that we've learned about how to do this work in the last couple of months that we can carry into this next phase, even if it's not explicitly about COVID response, right? So even if you're an organization that, has to change your work if you're closed, or if, you're pivoting your work in some way, or you're doing something exciting, I think, with everyone still sort of stuck at home for a little while, continuing to engage them and sort of intersperse those asks with, meaningful opportunities to see your work, to talk to your staff. We've seen some organizations organize, little smaller, more intimate Zoom chats with different program staff or the executive director. There are lots of different creative things that people are doing, and I think it will sort of strengthen those opportunities for asks when people really have that mission and impact top of mind.
Thanks, Anna. Our next question is, do you see any opportunities for nonprofit and small business collaborations or partnerships to weather the storm together and reach mutual goals of community wellness?
Yeah, we have seen examples of organizations within a sector coming together, leaders from the organizations, to talk about how they might together best serve their communities. And it doesn't always have to do with the traditional, a merger situation. It has to do now, I think people are more receptive than they have been in the past to sharing, for instance, back office functions, human resources, financial accounting types of services. This is something that we're seeing leaders in many different sectors beginning to explore.
This is a great question. And, I think on the case side, it makes me think about something that we, is another kind of mantra, at the firm, which is, that people don't give to organizations or they don't give to organizational needs. They're giving to make an impact in the community. And I think that this is a great time, if there are small businesses who really, are sort of their business or the work that they do really connects to the mission of your organization. And so I'm thinking of, there are many sort of nonprofit missions that connect to sort of community well-being, sort of civic participation, strengthening communities, and that includes small businesses. And I think we're all really seeing, and donors too are really seeing sort of the fabric of our communities and the meaning of that, and seeing where small businesses fit, where nonprofits fit, and sort of seeing the value of that. And so I do think that for some organizations, probably not for all, there could be an opportunity to sort of partner together and have small business representatives serving as ambassadors for some of your work, and then vice versa, have nonprofits sort of vouching for those small businesses as critical players in the community for community strength. I think that it strengthens your case to be speaking sort of beyond your one organization and speaking about a vision and a mission and impact that includes other organizations too, including small businesses.
Our next question is, what kind of permanent philanthropic paradigm shift do you expect in the post-COVID-19 era?
So certainly, I think there are going to be changes in hiring, and Marion can speak to that. Certainly, we've seen this across the board for-profit and nonprofit in how employees, nonprofit and for-profit, work and interact together. We've seen, Facebook and Twitter and telling employees that they don't ever have to come into the office again. And I think the digital interaction will really be stepped up because people are learning, and it's providing opportunities for nonprofits, for people to engage with them in different ways and to have broader audiences for their work and their mission.
If I could add to what Sarah has said, I think that is right. I think the foundations of how we think about who is needed for philanthropic conversations and that profile is going to shift. In fact, we started to see it shift already, even before the pandemic began, as people became a little more flexible. Again, part of it had to do with the supply of strong development professionals, but at the same time, I think now is a chance for organizations to re-examine what strong development professional means. So I think that will change who's in the conversation, and by extension, the nature of how that conversation will unfold.
Another thing to add, especially as events have been going online, I could definitely see there continue to be that aspect, especially with online auctions that were a thing before, but they've definitely become a bigger thing now with more nonprofits getting experience with them. So I could definitely see moving forward them keeping that in addition to that live auction that they're used to, but it's just another way to generate additional funds.
And And I think we have time for one last question, which is, do you have any tips for the qualification process when in-person meetings are not possible? Can the same level of qualification be accomplished over the phone? With this process, is it better to do cold calls or try and schedule a first-time call with the donor that I don't already have a relationship established with?
So we're going to have to work with phone calls and Zoom calls. If you can do a video call, if the donor has that capability and that comfort level, even better. That's the best thing we can get to in person. But there is quite a lot to be learned from a phone call, and it isn't an either or in terms of cold calls versus people you know already. Qualification involves both. And so you'll need to try to email and set up an appointment for a qualification call, whether they're a new prospect or someone who knows your organization already and has touched you in some way.
Great. And with that, we'd like to thank you all for joining us today. We also encourage you to visit our COVID-19 resource page where you can read our advice, review resources, and schedule a free consultation with us. Within 24 hours, you'll be receiving a follow-up email from GoToWebinar with a link to the recording and resource page. In the meantime, please don't hesitate to email our presenters with any questions you have. Thanks and have a great day.